this is Gina. Welcome back to Teen Story Share, where every week I share a short story or some chapters from a longer book that could be fun and interesting for teens or really for anybody. And I'm going to be starting something new this week where I'll read a longer chunk of a book, but only one chapter per week. So each story share session is going to be shorter, but you will get a longer look at the book over time. So we're going to be reading a few chapters of this book over the next few weeks. Where the World Ends by Geraldine McCaughrean. And this was a Prince Award winner a few years ago. The Prince, if you don't know, is basically the most prestigious award for young adult books. And this one takes place in a remote Scottish group of islands in the 1720s, and this is based on a true story. Every summer, some of the boys and men from one of the islands would go out to a sea stack, which is just basically this tall, steep, rocky little bit of land in the middle of the sea where nothing can really live except seabirds. And they will go out there, be dropped off to hunt birds for a few weeks, and then get picked back up by a boat from their home island. But this year nobody comes to get them, so they have to survive on the island for months at a time, on the sea stack actually, not even an island. So we're gonna find out what happens. So before we jump right in, I'll just show you the map in case you're a visual person like me that likes to see this. So you can see there's Scotland, and this is St. Kilda. St. Kilda is the name of the whole archipelago. This is the home island of the people in the book. That's the only inhabited one. And then there's other smaller islands dotted around, and this is the warrior stack where they get left to hunt the birds. There's a couple of different birds that get mentioned in this book that you might not have heard about before, and I'll show you a couple pictures of those just so you can picture the action. So this one is the gairfowl, or the great auk, and this is almost 3 feet tall, if you can imagine that, and flightless. Today they're extinct. And then here's the puffin. You may have heard of the puffin before. And the other one that they mention a lot at the beginning are the gannets. Alright, so let's dive right in. Where the World Ends. Chapter 1, Crossing Over. His mother gave him a new pair of socks, a puffin to eat on the voyage, and a kiss on the cheek. God will keep you safe, Quilliam, but he'll not keep you clean. You must do that for yourself. Happily, she did not try to hug him close. He shook hands with his father, who remarked, quite amicably, "The floor needs digging out. You can give me a hand when you get back." Then Quill walked down to the boat. His parents followed on behind, of course, but the goodbyes were done and out of the way. Besides, he would be back in a week or 3. They were only going out to one of the stacks to harvest the summer plenty, bird meat, eggs, feathers, oil. It was a blade-sharp August day. The sea burned black by the sun's brightness. And no, there were no omens hinting at trouble ahead. Herta people noticed such things. The clouds did not split open and let fall drops of blood. Someone would have remembered that. No sinister bird settled on anyone's roof. A gull flew over and dropped its mess on Mr. Kane. But that was nothing out of the ordinary. Who wouldn't if they could? But no signs, no dread omens. All the men and women of Herta helped carry the boat down the beach. 3 men and 9 boys climbed aboard it, and a few people on shore raised their hands. Not to wave exactly, but to check that the wind had not swerved unkindly off course. Quill did not know if the maiden from the mainland was there among the crowd. Didn't look to see. To be seen looking would have had every other boy on the boat mocking him. So he didn't look. Well, maybe out of the corner of his eye. Once or twice. The fathers and uncles, wives and aunts shoved them off, and no, the pebbles did not claw at the boat's keel. No lugworms squirmed out of their holes to lug it back ashore. Nothing out of the ordinary shouted in their faces, "Don't go! Stay home!" It was a good launch. Or maybe if there were bad omens, Quilliam missed them, trying to glimpse Merdina one last time. A journey out to the big stacks can take an age, even with a sail. Warrior Stack is so big it looks close too, but there are 4 miles of open water to cross before you get there. Water that folds itself into hills and valleys and doubles the distance. It was little Davy's first time out, and Quill could see the seasickness rising in him, as well as the fear. One day, if the years made him cruel, Quill might feel inclined to make fun of a first-timer and elbow him in the chest, as the bully Kenneth was doing now. But Quill remembered all too well his own first voyage, how he had expected every upward lurch of the bow to tumble the boat over, every trough between the waves to take them to the bottom. He remembered waves higher than a boat's gunwales, the spray soaking him to the skin. He remembered fretting about getting ashore without making a fool of himself, and then having to prove day after day that he could catch fowl as well as the rest, and having no bed to sleep on, and never a mother about for comfort at night. Poor little Davy, not the biggest birdie in the nest. And bless him, look, thought Quill, he has on his socks already in place of his boots, all ready to climb. Davy looked too green, in every sense of the word, to stand up to Kenneth and his bullying, but when he puked, he chose to do it in Kenneth's lap. An inspired revenge, thought Quill appreciatively. They passed Stack Lee and got their first unhindered view of the place where they would be living for the next few weeks. John began to drum on the boards with his feet, and the rest joined in, until Mr. Kane, a reliable killjoy, told them to stop their noise or they would wake every dead sailor from his resting place. The clatter died away, and Quill saw the youngest boys cast little superstitious glances over the side, in case dead sailors were a serious possibility. Warrior Stack grows bigger the closer you get. You would swear it was pushing its way upward, a rock whale pitching its whole bulk into the sky, covered in barnacles, aiming to swallow the moon. Nearby, Borare has big patches of green grass on it, but Warrior Stack is so big and so dark that all the fowl of the air since creation haven't been able to stain it. It looms there, as black and fearful as one horn of the devil himself, and it teems with birds. To reach the landing place, the skipper had to round the base of the sea stack, passing right underneath the bulging shelf called the Overhang, where a never-ending sleet of bird droppings pours down. The boat fell silent as each man and boy, except Kenneth, shut his mouth tight. Look up there, Davy," said Kenneth, pointing urgently upward, but Davy had the wit not to fall for that one. No one looks up while he is under the overhang, so only Kenneth caught a faceful. For Quilliam, though, the overhang was not the worst part of the voyage. That was the landing stage. The sea swell slops up and over a bumpy jut of tilting rock. Getting ashore is a game you don't even try unless the wind is square on from the northeast. The old men back home talked about the stacks as if they were just larders crammed with fowl, put there by God expressly to feed the people on Herta. But had they not been afraid in their young days, when they went fowling on the Warrior? Had they never feared the jump from boat to cliff? The bow rises and falls so fast that the rock face seems to rush up and down in front of your eyes. The spray flies fit to blind you, and there's maybe a piece of kelp you'll land on, slippery as soap, and you'll lose your footing and go down between the boat and the rocks. There again, maybe Quill, like Davy, was just a scaredy mouse. Mr. Don, barefoot and with a rope tied round his body, to fetch him back aboard if he fell, and the boat's mooring rope wrapped around his wrist, balanced precariously on the bow and steeled himself for the jump. The stack rose sheer in front of them, looking like the impregnable wall of a castle keep, and yet Donald Don made stepping ashore look easy. The fowling party formed a line in the boat, Mr. Ferris and Mr. Kane at the front, then Murdo, then Quilliam, then Kenneth, and so on in order of height, Callum, Lachlan, John, Ewan, Neil, and Davy. They had not only themselves to get ashore, but sacks, nets, coils of rope and wicks, baskets, clubs, and a battered saddle. A small, cold hand took a grip on Quill's wrist. "Get back in line," he hissed. But Davy clung on, saying nothing, just looking from Quill to the cliff, Quill to the heaving waves, shaking his head. Quill threw his half-eaten puffin over the side, looped a coil of rope across his body, and when it came his turn, took a hold on the little lad's arm, so tight that Davy squealed, and jumped ashore with him. A great shining wave washed over the landing place a moment later, but Quill had hopped out of its reach by then. "Easy, see? Only pick your feet up quicker next time," he called, as Davy scrambled away up the rock face, new socks all wet and flapping like a duck's flippers. It made Quill laugh to see them. Looking back down at the boat, he could see the row of boys still aboard, left hands clutched white round their bundles, right hands just clenched, jaws set, all hoping to get ashore with their pride intact and without breaking any bones. So, maybe there was a touch of the scaredy mouse in them all. Lachlan came past Quill, clambering ashore, nimble despite an armful of sacks and a bulky rope round his body. He was shabby as a molting sheep, and twice as cheerful as he ever looked back home on Herta. You would have thought he preferred the stack to home. Why, thought Quill, when one wrong step and the place will kill you. But, having thought it, he felt a sudden superstitious need not to think ill of the stack. It did not mean anyone harm. It was not a living thing, only a slab of rock in a big, cold ocean at the edge of the world. Once the fowling party reached lower Bothy, they stood about, drying in the wind, like cormorants, and watched the boat tacking away into the wind, homeward. Callum waved. The boatman was his father. Lachlan uttered a yelp of joy. Davy bit his lip. No going back now, till Callum's father returned to get them. "Back soon," Quill told Davy, remembering that first time the sea had separated him from his mother. No one wanted to be the first inside the cave. Who knew what might be dead in there, or, worse still, living? This close to the water, crabs and dying birds found their way in. Calling it bothy made the place sound homely, like a hut or a cottage, when it was really only a dark, dank chink in the great wall of rock. Just 12 people, a heap of fowling nets, a cooking pot, 6 long ropes, an old saddle, egg baskets, bundles and boots. Cozy. In a few days they would move higher up the stack, but in the meantime it was somewhere to dump the gear, and a good place for plundering the overhang of its numberless gannets. So what if this was a stinky wet cave? Most of the time they would be outside, plucking riches from the kingdom of birds. And every time a lad came fowling on the stacks, he went home less of a boy and more of a man. If he went home at all, that is. Alright, join us next time for Chapter 2, and have a great weekend. Bye.